Welcome back to The Great Conversation. We are here at a turning point in the Iliad, Book 9. But as always, before we dive in, what are you drinking today?
I'm having the ginger beer. This is actually homemade in Pensacola. Hometown made.
Homegrown.
Yeah, so if you're ever in Pensacola, Florida, I don't live there, but I was there doing some shopping because it's close by. Grab some of this ginger beer.
Yes,
What
and
are
I
you having?
have Namali black tea. This is from India. This is Orthodox black tea. You can't really see it. I don't know the pot. I might show you guys my tea leaves. I'm a very big tea drinker. So I have some Orthodox black tea here. But at Book 9, this is what we're talking about today. There's a big turning point in the war between the Achaians and the Trojans. And so we're going to open up with a...
And that is what our translation says, the Achaians.
Yes, the Achaians is what it says.
Grecians, yeah.
Yep.
Whatever translation you're reading, I know that can be confusing sometimes.
Absolutely. So I'm going to open up with a quote, and then we're going to talk about how we got here.
Yeah.
They took their seats in assembly, dispirited, and Agamemnon stood up before them, shedding tears like a spring, dark running, that down the face of a rock impassable drips its dim water. So groaning heavily, Agamemnon spoke to the Argives, friends who are leaders of the Argives and keep their counsel. Zeus, son of Cronos, has caught me badly in bitter futility. He is hard, who before this time promised me and consented that I might sack strong-walled Ilion and sail homeward. Now he has devised a vile deception and bids me go back to Argos in dishonor, having lost many of my people.
That's a huge change in Agamemnon's character and how he is portraying his strength in this epic.
Yeah. Up until this point, he is the macho man of the Achaians. He is the leader. You know, he's head honcho.
Yeah, and he was so confident by his dream that was given to him by Zeus, by one of Zeus's messengers, that he was going to go to Troy and sack the city.
Basically just throw down.
And now what has happened? Why has he changed his mind?
Yeah.
And so he gets to this point. Agamemnon is crying.
Yeah.
And he is just bitter.
Imagine,
and
for those of you who like
overwhelmed.
podcast, imagine Jocko Willink crying in front of all of his seals. Like, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Right. And
This
he's just willing to go
huge
home in
dude.
shame.
Yeah. And he's just like, I can't do it. I'm done.
And so his men, some of his very strong men, stand up and say, whoa, we're not going home.
Yeah.
But another man, Nestor, who is he's an older man in his army, he's willing to say, okay, well, how about maybe we should ask Achilles? Maybe Agamemnon, could you reconcile with Achilles, who you bitterly
Trashed.
destroyed his pride at the beginning of this epic.
Yep.
Maybe some reconciliation so that Achilles will come and fight with us because we can't do this without him.
So for those who may be, just joining the Great Conversation, what happened? Just briefly. Can you take us through what happened?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I mean, just get us caught up to speed here. Just for those joining for the first time. And if you are joining for the first time, comment below. Let us know if you're thinking about reading the great books, or if you are reading the great books, what book are you on? I'm just curious. We love this great conversation taking place. But dive us in, catch us up, and then we'll go in through the book.
So at the beginning of this epic, page 1, there's Achilles and there's Agamemnon and a lot of other people. And they're having this council because Apollo is striking down fire on their city. And they have to have this council because they don't know why this god is destroying their city. Mm-hmm. And it's made clear to us that it's because Agamemnon has taken a woman and her father wants his daughter back.
Yeah, and he was a priest of one of the gods.
Yes, of Apollo. That's why Apollo is coming down.
Yep.
And so everybody's saying, Agamemnon, give her back to Chryses the priest.
Yeah.
And he says, no, I don't want to.
Yeah, I like her.
Yeah.
She makes me happy.
Yeah, and this kind of all starts because Achilles recommended it. He suggested...
Yeah, he suggested, hey, give her back so we can, move on from this.
Yeah, and Agamemnon's pride says no, and he gets really angry at Achilles.
Yes.
And says, fine, okay, I'll give her back.
Yep.
But if I give her back, Achilles, then I get your woman, your bride.
Who's Brius.
Brius, yes. And Achilles is like, well, no way.
Yeah.
And they start this verbal jousting back and
basically.
forth, and then Achilles is about to kill Agamemnon when a goddess comes down and says, don't do it. You can tear him up verbally, but don't kill him. Just let all this happen. Your prize will come.
Yep. So that's
and his pride is hurt.
Yeah, and that's the setup between Achilles and Agamemnon.
Right.
Stole his girl, basically against his will because he had to give up. Agamemnon had to give up his girl, and now we're at this point where Agamemnon needs Achilles' help because Achilles, we're finding out, is the ultimate warrior, so to speak, right now in the scene.
So Achilles is angry.
Yep.
He is the son of a human man, but a goddess for his mother.
Yes.
And so he prays to his mother to come down,
Yep.
and he tells her the whole story and says, where is my prize in this? How is this going to work out for me? Achilles' mother goes back to Zeus and says, please help my son Achilles, who I love, who you love, and she lays out this whole story of what should happen.
Help redeem his pride, his prize, and get him back into a place where he feels respected and honored, basically.
But how is that going to happen? So what happens is that Zeus agrees that he will give Agamemnon this dream, this sign that he will go to war against the Trojans and sack the city.
Which is exactly the vision we just saw him speak, saying, I had this vision, and now, whoa, what's happening?
Right. Because it was all a setup.
It was all a setup to get him to go to war.
Right.
Okay.
And we know throughout this whole epic
this is why it becomes so stinking cool.
Yeah.
At first I'm reading the book, I'm like, this book sucks. There's so much that's going on. And then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I'm seeing this whole picture come together. I'm sorry, continue.
No, it's okay.
It's a rough start.
Yeah,
Just
and the gods just play with the men of this war the whole time.
Yeah.
They're just always, helping and then not helping, and then the gods are just squabbling.
Yeah, they'll bend an arrow, and all of a sudden the guy was gonna die, but the gods bent the arrow and then it missed him, and
and this is
so much interjection.
This is so amazing that Homer does this because we see mankind, they are actually dying in bloody battle, and there's actually a problem going on here. And then we see the gods, and they're having this verbal war of just petty. Well,
I like this guy.
I like this guy. I favored this one. Not because they have any standards or that man is actually of good character. They just choose.
They just have their favorites.
And they have their favorites. And they mess with the men of the war.
Yes.
And so it is very dramatic, and there's a lot that goes on, and it's kind of confusing because sometimes the Trojans are winning, and then all of a sudden the Grecians or the Achaians are winning, and it just goes back and forth.
Yep.
So we get to this point. Up until now, the Grecians, the Achaians, have really they've had the upper hand.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden Zeus tells all the gods to just stop their playing. They're not allowed to interfere anymore, and Zeus is going to interfere. And this is where he really goes back to the deal that he made that Achilles would be needed and favored.
Yes. And so that's why
So the Trojans are winning.
Yeah. And that's why we're at the point where now he's going to Achilles. So then the whole setup of Achilles' mom going and saying, hey, I want to get Agamemnon to a position where he needs Achilles' help.
Right.
So which is where we're at right now, him crying, I need help. So.
But the question is, he says, he doesn't even say at first, I need help. He just says, woe is us. Yeah. Zeus is not for us anymore. True. Let's just go home in shame. And that's where his men really stand up and say, well, hold on. There has to be something else that we can do. Yeah. And the wisdom of some of the other men that are fighting with Agamemnon recommend reconciliation with Achilles.
Yes.
So this is a huge turning point. It's not something that really we have seen a lot of Achilles in the book so far. And so finally Achilles gets to come back into the story and we get to hear more from Achilles' side. Yeah, absolutely. And so what we're going to see now is the first thing is Nestor comes. And what I like about this kind of delivery is he gives honor to Agamemnon. Even though Agamemnon in this moment is like kind of cowarding and wanting to walk away, he's still Nestor, who's full of a lot of wisdom, I think, comes and says, hey, great Agamemnon, lordly of all, king of the Achaians. He really like sets it up. It's kind of like the whole 2 compliments before a dig. And he says, okay, you are great, but we should go counsel with Achilles. Mm-hmm. And so then he kind of builds out and devises this plan of let's go to Achilles. Let's basically like give him gifts because you stole
his bride away, and that's what we're heading into. And the first question I want to kind of throw out is like, do you want to be at a place, as far as character is concerned, where you're having to backtrack what you did in order to ask help from somebody? Because that's really what we're seeing right now. We're seeing Agamemnon in a position where he can't just like, hey, Achilles, my man, my bro, my, fighter, come join me and let's push back this resistance. He has messed himself over so bad that we're seeing he's going to have to lay out the red carpet and all these gifts just to try and woo him back. And so that's my first question, throwing it out there.
Right. Do we,
do we live a life where in order to get what we want, we have to roll over and repent deeply from the mistakes and slanders that we've caused? Or do we live forward thinking of always having good relationships?
In a sense, are we always pissing people off and like, well, I don't care, what you want. What about what I want? I didn't, Agamemnon from the very start was just thinking all about what he wanted.
100%.
And we've even seen just some of what Homer has kind of described for us from the previous war that Agamemnon and Achilles fought together with. That Achilles obviously was the hero, and he should have received so many prizes. All of the men should have. And yet Agamemnon was just kind of like holding it all and just handing out
that line.
What he wanted. So Agamemnon is constantly thinking
of himself.
And he is a great leader, you know, especially during this time period. He was a king. He was Atreus' son. He was lord over all. He was godlike. And so, of course, he had that pride. But maybe bringing it even back down to just our personal level like we're doing is, are we just always thinking about what we want and keeping things and just kind of like handing out,
giving little prizes,
whether
just
it's
to keep people coming along, just teasing it out? Or do we liberally pour out blessings and gifts to others for just for living with us and fighting with us? Maybe not an actual battle, but I love that line. It says he kept back everything and lightly, he didn't say lightly, but basically that was the context, lightly gave to others.
And I just always think of it, like, I use this phrase all the time with things that we're doing, is smart selfish. Because truly we are all selfish. We look to ourselves and, we are very egocentric. It's just the way that we are as people. But is there a way that we can be more smart selfish in our life, thinking forward of how it will turn out for us later on? So Agamemnon, if he was smart selfish, maybe he would have thought, okay, Achilles has come and fought with us in this previous war, maybe I should really give him just all of these prizes and all of this honor so that in the future he will continue to fight with me and we can keep winning and I can keep getting bigger and bigger if I keep my man here and keep giving him all the glory and honor that he deserves. And that's just smart selfish. So for in ourselves, are we giving other people lavish praise and always pointing to the other person? Because really, in the future, that will continue to grow us. People will look to us for, wow, you're such an amazing person. You're always praising people and giving people credit for things. And
100%. It's the whole concept of, Simon Sinek said, leaders eat last. It's the whole thing of you put your people and get them what they need first. And then you come and almost not take the scraps, but kind of like, take the end of the line, make sure everybody has what they need, and then you come in and eat and, get what you need. I also think of, our previous, our previous president, Obama, everybody said he was such a good speaker. And there was a reporter who went to kind of an open house where he was communicating with the city council, and everybody sat down and, at the end of the thing, at the end of the council, Obama had just asked a ton of questions, and everybody in the room said, oh my goodness, he's such a captivating speaker. He was so captivating and he just drew us in. But actually, the reporter said he didn't say much of anything. He just asked questions, which is the same thing we're seeing. Agamemnon is the opposite. He's taking charge. He's speaking. He's leading. It's all about him. And so, it's kind of a segue there, but
it's great that Nestor recommends that he go and reconcile with Achilles, and that he agrees to it. He says, this is a great idea, and I'm going to give him all of these gifts. Plus, I'm going to give him his woman back without even sleeping with her.
I didn't even sleep with her.
I'm
so great.
So there's all these gifts, but what we don't ever really see is this heart of
repentance,
apology, and wow, I really screwed us over because of that whole event that happened. And it's just about the gifts. And that is that time period. Gifts were incredibly honoring, but it's just all about the gifts and all the gifts that he could give.
Yeah.
And it was in conjunction with, okay, I will give him these if he comes and fights. So again, it's not a true apology.
Yeah.
Now they needed him, so I can totally understand that situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking at us, do we apologize or reconcile with people because it's in a time of our need? Or is it just because, wow,
character.
I really am just not being the type of person that I want to be to all these people. I really need to reconcile and apologize.
Yeah. And this is where I love it. It starts to get good because now they go and they deliver this message. So
who's they?
Phoenix, Odysseus, and then is it Aias?
Aias, yeah.
Aias.
And again, the names are going to probably be different if you have a different translation. I don't know if we've said this. Our translation, I don't want to mess it up.
Yep.
Richard Lattimore is our translation. It's an incredible translation, very descriptive.
Yes.
But that is our translation.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
So yes, these 3 men are chosen by Agamemnon.
Yep.
Great choice by him because he knows Achilles and he knows the connection that he has with these 3 men.
Yep.
So this...
Do you want to just kind of set it up real quick? So basically Phoenix, we find out as we're reading through, basically raised and trained Achilles. So there's a big motivation for Achilles to come back. You know, his basically dad is saying, hey, we need you. Remember how I raised you. Remember how I cared for you. Remember how I fed you. Basically, he's like leaning into him saying, I'm your pops. Come on, help us out.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's a lot of not only gifts, but then when we find out that they offer not only gifts, but they say, hey, if you don't accept his gifts, what about coming just to save our skin? What about just the honor of and the glory of helping us win this battle back? So they kind of hit him from 2 angles. A gifts and then a guilt trip is basically what happens.
Yeah, they tell some stories of some examples of why he should come. And the big answer by Achilles was no.
Yeah. So,
and I honestly didn't see it coming because I was like, okay, this is exactly what he wanted.
Redemption.
Yeah, this is what Achilles wanted. He wanted Agamemnon to need him.
Yeah.
And so I was expecting him to say yes.
Yeah.
But he says, no
he says
way.
No.
Like, not even thinking about it. I don't care about the gifts. I actually don't want to touch. I don't want any gifts
anything from him.
From Agamemnon.
Imagine somebody
feels dirty.
You've been pulled a quick one over on. They have completely obliterated your reputation. Would you want something from them? That's basically where we're at right now. So there's a line. I love this line.
For sure.
So Achilles responds to Odysseus, right? He says, son of Latreus, forgive me if I read that wrong, and seed of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus, without consideration for you, I must make my answer. The way I think and the way it will be accomplished, that you may not come one after another and sit by me and speak softly. For I detest the doorways of death. I detest that man, Agamemnon, who hides one thing in the depths of his heart and speaks forth another. But I will speak to you the way it seems best to me. Neither do I think the son of Atreus, Agamemnon, will persuade me, nor the rest of the Danaans, since there was no gratitude given for fighting incessantly forever against your enemies. Mm-hmm. So that's his response. Basically, what we've kind of built up is, you guys haven't done anything for me. You've used me and used me and used me, and then you say one thing, you're double-tongued. You say one thing, you do another. Mm-hmm. And so that is his response. No gratitude and hiding the truth of why you're actually here with me.
Yeah. And, Achilles also says another line because these men essentially bring to him, like, come back for your own glory and honor.
Yes.
That you will get by fighting with us and defeating the Trojans. And Achilles pretty much says, I have been told, or, I know this prophecy that if I go and fight, I'm going to die. And yes, I'll die in honor, but I don't care because if I stay and go home and don't fight, I get to live a long life.
Yes.
Peaceful life, just enjoy it. And I've already had my glory. And we all die. So I'm just going to choose to go home and not fight with y'all. So that's just my answer.
Yeah. And then we lead kind of on, and then we get to kind of the root of this. There's a whole other layer that we're seeing here that we haven't talked about yet, and that's Helen. So basically, he comes forward and he says, why are we even fighting when there's also the element of we're also kind of fighting for Helen. But Helen is just one person's bride. Mm-hmm. Don't all these other men, all these Achaians have wives that they may want to go home and be with. Instead, we're out fighting here for one lady. Because there's actually this whole other twist that comes in where Helen is being fought over. Right?
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, Agamemnon's brother wants his bride back.
Yes. So they're fighting for this whole other bride. And then Boreas is the cause of this contention between Agamemnon and Achilles. I'm messing that one up.
It's both. I mean, it's our translation. So.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. But there's just all this, basically what we're seeing is the plane of the gods and the minds. And like I've said from the beginning, it's really kind of like these people trying to reconcile the turmoil and the chaos that is life in war.
Right. So Homer portraying this story, and in this time with Grecian rituals and beliefs, because it did rule the Mediterranean world, this was the thought. All of this turmoil is happening
because of these
there
girls.
There has to be
a reason.
There has to be these powers that are doing all of this.
Because this is crazy.
And Homer portrays them as very comedic, just very petty.
Yeah.
And that is where these men just have to say, well, and Achilles, I think, says it, that we're all going to die. And and we really don't know how the gods are going to fight for us or against us. So we just have to do our best. Yeah. And I think Agamemnon says it too. Maybe Hector. They probably all say it.
They have all said it at one point. Either whether we fight or whether we go home, we will eventually die. We all have a death mark at some point. And he's saying, when do I want to die is the question.
Right. So we've asked the question for you and for us about Agamemnon, how we are living our life in character in contrast or in comparison and parallel with Agamemnon. Which one are we doing? Well, what about Achilles?
How do we respond?
What would you do? Because honestly, I don't know if he's wrong. I mean, he lays out this whole...
His response is very thorough.
Yeah, that why should I? And I think, honestly, I would probably say the same thing. And I know I have with people. Why would I do that when you have been so against me?
Yes.
You're not a friend. You're an enemy, essentially. Why would I do that? And I know that sounds so harsh, like, oh, well, I'm not that bad of a person. But we all, we do it. And we want to only be friends of those who befriend us. But how are we acting towards people that have done us wrong and come to us and ask for help, and we still know they're not really for us? They still have something hidden in their heart. How are we dealing with those situations?
And this is the great conversation. This is not to have an answer today. This is to have a conversation about how we're going through life, what we are learning from how men of the past and works of the past have informed and inspired a better response, whatever that looks like. Does that look like saying, I'll fight, thank you for the gifts, or no gifts needed, I'll fight anyway? What does that response look like? I'm going to move into one last section because he says no, right? And then all of a sudden we see them trying to kind of work through and not really guilt trip, but give him other scenarios. So in 601, he says, listen then, do not have such a thought in your mind. Let not the spirit within you turn you that way, dear friend. It would be worse to defend the ships after they are burning. No, with gifts promised, go forth. The Achaians will honor you as they would an immortal. But if without gifts, you go into fighting where men perish, your honor will no longer be as great, though you drive back the battle. So basically he's saying, stuff's going to get real. So are you going to respond now?
Who is this speaking? This is Achilles?
No, this is Aias. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Aias speaks to Achilles. I'm sorry, I should have set that up. But basically, Aias speaks to Achilles these words. He says, hey, it's going to get real. Are you going to help us now when honor is great because you responded out of grace, when gifts are plentiful? Or are you going to respond after we're burning and you really, because of your heart's strings, have no out but to help us? So then they start to get in kind of manipulation mode, and really trying. And then he pokes his pride. He goes on and pokes his pride. And continues to try and get him into battle. He says, son of Latreus, seed of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus, let us go. I think that nothing will be accomplished by argument on this errand. It is best to go back quickly and tell this story, though it is not good to the Danaans, who sit there waiting for us to come back, seeing that Achilles has made savage the proud-hearted spirit within his body. He is hard and does not remember that friends' affection wherein we honored him by the ships, far beyond all others. So, now they're playing like these like childish games to try and get him to go back. And it's understandable.
Yeah.
They need help.
They're desperate.
They're about to get trashed.
Remember, Agamemnon's crying.
Yes.
And they're desperate. I mean, they have panic, and like that's how book 9 starts, is panic and terror has overtaken them.
Yeah.
Because they're behind their, fortress, what they've built.
Yes, they're deep dishes with their spikes.
Yeah.
And their big wall.
And they are afraid that all of their ships are going to be burned.
Yeah.
And they will be either killed in the fire or they will be deserted in a foreign land forever.
And now the last question is, does it help Achilles to deny them, refuse the gifts, and pump his pride? Because basically he's feeling,
right,
haha, suck it. I'm not going to help you. He's getting the win, but he's not getting anything. He's just there. He's just feeling self-righteous that he had the opportunity to deny them.
Right.
So then from there, is that the feeling we want when somebody who hurts us comes back and says, I need you, and you say, no. That only ends up actually hurting us.
Right. And Homer is amazing in that I love this about Homer, that both sides are represented very, pretty much objectively.
Yeah, it's really good.
And even though, the Trojans at this time period from Homer's perspective would have been the enemy, both sides are represented very well. Yeah. And so with Achilles,
it's hard to tell who you want to win. I don't know who I want to win.
And so with Achilles, Homer doesn't tell us if he's eaten up with pride or anger or rage. He doesn't tell us what it's doing to his inner self. And so we have to decide that. We have to look at ourselves and say, okay, if I was sitting there, like Ben was saying, ha, you guys all burn in hell, and I'm just going to go home, would that eat up at us inside? Would we really get to go home and enjoy our life peacefully, or would we forever have that guilt? Yeah. And we know that holding on to rage and anger really only hurts us.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, if Agamemnon dies, he dies, but Achilles will live on forever being eaten up by that rage and that pride.
Yeah.
So this is an opportunity where we could say, okay, yeah, my answer might be that I would just say no. I'd be like Achilles and say, well, forget y'all.
Yeah.
But what is that smart selfish that really is going to help him out? Is saying yes and releasing that rage and that pride and saying, I'm going to go and help y'all. Is that going to be better for Achilles?
Yeah. And that's
in the long run.
Yeah. And that's the question that we posed today in the video. Really, that's the overarching question. This has been a phenomenal chapter or book. Let us know, like we said, in the comments, answer some of these questions. We'd love to hear how you guys are feeling about this. If you're working through the book, let us know where you're at in the great books of the Western world. If you're new to the channel and you've watched through this far, we are going through the great books of the Western world. Maybe we should have started with that. And this is the great conversation we're having with you guys. Please join the community, subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss out on the future videos. It's been great having y'all today.
Yeah.
Love chatting with you guys.
And ginger beer is very good.
Yeah.
It's very spicy.
It really
But I would have this again.
It will rock your
socks. So go find some.
Big Jack.
Yes. Well, not this one specifically, unless you're in Pensacola, Florida, but a ginger beer.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good.
I'm out of tea.
Cheers, y'all.
See
Bye.
ya.